Okay, here we go. Part 5, strategies and techniques for transforming pastures into food forests. So there are 3 big approaches that we can use, and the best is that we use them together when possible. So the first one is the holistic grazing. I already mentioned the economic reasons and the ecological benefits. So here there's a link to, again, a Regenesis document that has lots of links to YouTube videos, and it shows much more than we can talk about here. So dig in, enjoy. The second approach is what we're going to focus on for the rest of this section: small scale intensive forest gardens. They're a little more input heavy, but they produce a lot quickly, and they require more detailed design and management. This is kind of a zone 2-3 forest garden. They're exciting, they're fun. We'll get back to them. The third one I want to talk about is large-scale regenerative agroforestry. So this might be a large social project, for example, the Green Plateau in China, the Great Wall in Africa. It's a slower approach, works more with nature, and it's great for large-scale ecological restoration. It doesn't require much maintenance. Fukuoka Masanobu, the father of natural farming or do-nothing farming, he had this great vision of seed balls. He's the one who invented seed balls, making mass-producing seed balls of a whole different type of beans and radishes and pioneer species and fruit trees, and loading airplanes with these seed balls and throwing them out into the pastures. So if you have an airplane and want to do that, have a lot of land, like, contact me. I'd love to help you. Okay, jumping back to the small-scale intensive forest gardens. It's a very clear step-by-step procedure we use for preparing the line. We've done the analysis, we've done the design. So we're going to measure and mark the design. We know we need access for people. This is very important. We're going to mark the planting areas and mark out the paths between the planting row, or on both sides, the upside, downside. We want a main trail on the lower side, and on the upper side of the planting area, the planting row, we want an access trail. Doesn't need to be as big, but we do need to get in there. And so the width depends on the slope. Minimum 0.5 meter. Like for a real trail, we want to be able to pass a wheelbarrow. And so regardless of the slope, like 1 meter is kind of the minimum width for an access row below the tree line. And on flatter areas, we can go wider and be more luxurious. Okay, after we've marked the planting area, we're going to open the planting space. First, we open the row where we're going to plant. And we can do this hopefully with friends. It's not so fun to do it alone. It's good to have a big group of people and really bust out some good work early in the morning or late in the afternoon. And we can do this with pickaxes, with sharp shovels, or with a broad fork. Here's an image of a broad fork, if you don't know, where we can pry up the grass. In many cases, we tend to favor now the sharpened shovels and just shaving off. There might be some worm casualties, and to avoid that, what you can do is first tamp the soil, and that will make the worms retract and go down. And then you can shave off, have less worm casualties. So we want to remove the grass roots and leave as much of the topsoil intact as possible. And with the grass that we remove and the soil, we want to use it to level out the area along the line as much as we can. After we have that planting space marked and clean, then we want to do the paths. And the reason we do it this way is because the extra topsoil that comes from the paths, we want to be able to put onto the planting area. And yes, the paths, we do the top one first. We always start from the top and then work our way down because that's the way soil grows. And so we want to be able to, when we do the top path, the soil can fall and land on the planting area. And the second path we do, the soil that we gather from that path, we want to put up on top. And if it is the pasture, the grass, we want to put it down below, create a secondary barrier. In many cases, if we're working in the pastures, we don't actually replant the vetiver grass, for example. We just use the existing pasture grass as if it were vetiver, let it be a living barrier and soil erosion control. And if we are going to plant something as a barrier or a hedge, we plant the flamenhia or pigeon pea, nitrogen-fixing shrubs, or the Mexican sunflower, and use that as a living barrier to slow erosion and to help hold soil. All right. So there's much to talk about when we talk about the forestry layer and the tree and the forest gardens and the design. Again, here's a link for the 15-page food forest document that explains much of this in detail. And as well, there's a link here to a support species document. And I'm going to click on that and open that, and we're going to talk briefly about the support species. What are support species? Support species are plants that help our target species, the fruit trees and the other medicinals or cash crops that we want to produce. These species help fertilize and attract pollinators and help rebuild the soil. So important to know that there are the NPK. This is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. This is typically what a chemical fertilizer is, and we want to grow our nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And how do we do that? Well, there's a whole list of nitrogen fixers: Madero Negro, ice cream bean, guachipilin, pigeon pea, flamenhia. Here there are all links to all of these as well. You can find more information. Many of them are documents that we've made that will tell you specifically how to reproduce and how to manage these plants. And so yes, lots of nitrogen fixers, as well the beans, the mucuna. For phosphorus, we use the Mexican sunflower, Tithonia diversifolia, boton de oro, this beautiful plant, deliciously smelling plant that has lots of uses to it. We plant lots of this. Again, there's a document that will explain much of this in detail, how we reproduce it, how we manage it. And for the potassium, we plant lots and lots of bananas. So there are two charts here I want to show you quickly. These are our general. Did my best researching in many different sources to know how much nitrogen fixers, how much of the Tithonia, the Mexican sunflower, how many bananas we're going to plant per hectare. So I'm going to scroll quickly up. And okay, so in a 1 hectare, if we're planting with 8 meters between rows, planting our target trees 5 meters apart, which is a non-intensive planting. Like we can plant much more intensively if we're stacking trees of different heights and different growth rates. But this is a simple system that gives us 250 target fruit trees per hectare. And if we're doing that, here are some general guidelines of what else we want to plant. So 250 fruit trees, we want to plant 250 banana plants as well in the same hectare. 250 nitrogen-fixing trees, for example, the ice cream bean, the ingas, or the madero negro, gliricidia, guachipilin, or a combination of these. As well, we want to plant 300 meters of flamenhia as a hedge. This can be a hedgerow that includes these pigeon peas. Every meter, we want to do a pigeon pea if it's in row with the flamenhia. And as well, these ice cream beans can be in the same row. This is our nitrogen row. And as well, we want to do at least 300 meters of the Mexican sunflower, which could be 600 cuttings every half a meter apart. This is explained here. There's much more in this document for you to read, to delve into the details. And over time, the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium ratio is going to change. So in the early stage, the first year or two, of the surface area of our planting, it could be half of our surface area could be nitrogen fixing shrubs, and that's going to decrease over the years. As we get down to the mature food forest, the 12 years in, it might be 10 to 30% of nitrogen fixers. And the same for the phosphorus and potassium. We're going to start with a higher percentage of these support species, and as the food forest matures, we're going to decrease them. So it's a lot of information. I hope you enjoy integrating it. We're going to continue. Here's another document, this Roadside Syntropic planting diagram. There's a text that goes along with this image here. Basically, this is one design that we came up with for planting along the roadside, where we plant lots of coconuts and dwarf pipas. We stagger them so that there's a dwarf pipa, a tall coconut, and so they're not competing for light. Plant lots of papaya in between. The sesame is the A here, the ajonjolí. Take your time, go through these documents. This is a tropical syntropic planting consortium, or a guild, and this is just a way to plan the species that we're putting in, so that in the short term, the 3 to 12 months, the 1 to 2 year, 2 to 4 years, 5 to 8, and 9 years beyond, so that we're getting harvest throughout these cycles. And we want to hopefully be getting harvest at the ground level, a mid-level, a tall, and the emergent, the highest level in the system. We could talk about this for an hour. Just planting seeds right now. In addition to the plants, we need to feed the soil food web. And so to do that, we need to keep in mind the 3 M's. The minerals, the microorganisms, and the organic material. And to do that, we use rock dust and calcium carbonate. Again, there are links here. In this document, there's a great source here in Costa Rica of a quality rock dust at a very affordable price. Also, the calcium carbonate is great for regulating the pH. And these are kind of go-tos in organic gardening. They're ecologically quite beneficial, and because the soils have been so depleted and so demineralized as well, the food that people get from conventional agriculture is incomparable to what organic agriculture or what food was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So a cob of corn is not the same as it was for our grandparents. So this rock dust is very important to remineralize the food and to remineralize ourselves. Microorganisms. Again, there's 3 links here to 3 different documents that we've created with the help of Tom Ingolia. Thank you, Tom. The Trichoderma, the microorganisms in general. There's aerobic and anaerobic, and the compost tea and the liquid fertilizers. Here there's another couple hours worth of information for you to dig into. And again, the support species for creating the biomass and the organic material to feed the soil food web. I will just say with the compost tea and the Trichoderma, so the Trichoderma, there are a lot of uses for it. Specifically, we're using it for the bananas, which have a host of potential pathogens, and we're using it in the annual gardens and in the greenhouse. The compost tea, the aerobic compost tea, we aerate it and we use that more out in the food forest and in the perennial gardens. That's in a brief little nutshell what we do. And of course, as time goes on, if we chose to be working with animals and grazing them, we reduce that. Although once the food forest grows a little bit, we can bring in sheep, goats, the occasional water buffalo. But in general, as tree cover expands, there's less pasture, and so the livestock will be less. And maybe we bring in chickens and other things. This is okay if we choose. And that's one more piece of the puzzle. Well done. Thank you for sticking in there with me. Drink water. Take your time with these documents. Go through them. And we're going to come back for the essential elements of food forest management. And I believe in this next video, we will wrap up the final part and cover the most common mistakes as well.